We're looking at this still life to practice our tones and shading with using just pencil. So I set up this still life. I've got light just coming from the right to the left. And so if you're ever setting up your own still life, always try to make sure that you've got light source coming from one side, preferably not above, but from one side or the other, and then you get a distinctive light, medium to dark shading, as you can see here. I used a pewter tankard, some onions and garlic just to get some different textures, and that's something also I recommend. And then we've put it together in a sort of triangular formation. So you've got your eye leading in through to the pewter opening, and that's where the biggest contrast is, you can see. So what I want you to do is to squint at it, and you can see where the dark elements are. So that would be inside the tankard, on the back here as well, and maybe closest under where some of the shadow areas are as well. And then you've got the medium tones, and then the lightest areas are hit where the light hits just on the right. To make this easier for you, I have actually put this into a black and white photograph. I'll post both so you can actually see the difference. But when you're actually looking in real life at these, a still life, which you'll obviously see in color, what you want to try and imagine it as a black and white photograph, exactly like this in tone. Because sometimes when you look at, say, color, like these reds, it can distract you from where the true tonal value is. So I am going to also, I have made this, as you can see, small. I've gone from A4 to A5 because otherwise you're going to be here all day, and there's a lot of shading in here. I'm more than happy for you to actually go to A4, but it's just going to take some time. So what I'm going to do is I've started to square this up. So I've got this on an A5 sheet, and what we're going to do first of all to help you draw it out is not only use the relationships and the negative spaces, but we're also going to what is known as square up the picture and actually draw it out in exactly the same size. So if you got an A printed out in A5, you can then fold it into quarters, or if you're putting this onto an iPad also, I know that some of my students actually have the grid on their pads as well, which is also helpful. Then you want to put it exactly the same size on your sketch pad, so you can see here like this, and you're going to put that into quarters. So for example, this is 15 centimeters by 21 centimeters, and then I've just halved each one. And what you're going to find is that you can then divide it up like a jigsaw. So that doesn't look so complicated now, does it? Because you've just got that onion with the edge, so you know that you can draw that in. And the same for this. And then this. Some boxes obviously are more complicated than others. And this is going to really help your observational skills as well when you're drawing out, because you're actually dissecting it and using all your sort of observational powers to actually get the correct objects in the correct places. So what I want you to first to do is print it out, or if you've got it on the iPad, try and get a grid across it. Do exactly the same size here, and then put that into quarters. And then really look at this picture. Take your time and actually look at it. Look to see that you've got where the overlaps are. where this onion is just a little bit off center. You've got a nice triangle here, a nice triangular shape. You've got lovely negative spaces here. You've got this garlic is on the same plateau as the onion that's going off at a nice triangle. This is another triangle here. You've got this circle here and the echoing shapes going around, and you'll have to be careful with this angle. That's probably going to be the most challenging part, but what you will do is you'll use the negative spaces around it, and look, where does this, the height of this onion just comes above that, and this handle is just coming between this and that onion as well. And so what I'm asking you to do is look at the relationship between the objects. Look at the spaces around each object. And also use this scaling, this dividing sections. So it's almost like you're not even looking at the still life. You're sort of also, it's almost now looking like an abstract. So square that up and just have a cup of tea and just look at it, because I've always said 50% of being an artist is just looking, absorbing. Don't just dive in, really look at it and prepare yourself mentally to actually draw it out. We're going to start off by drawing this out section by section. Now, can I just say that we all see differently. So I'm going to show you different ways of doing this, but you have to work out what is best for you. What I did first was I just literally squared that off, and then I started putting that half of the onion in. So it almost, as I said, becomes like an abstract shape. Look at that triangle there and that there. So you want that. So you're drawing that shape in, and you're drawing this shape. So that is a negative shape. And then if you want to look at the diagonal, you can check that there. Use your pencil. It's not an exact science, but it does work. And some people don't like sectioning off, and so they prefer to look at it all. So you're looking at the relationship between the objects. I try to use all the tools at my disposal, but I'm just trying to show you different ways of looking at things that you may not have thought of. So you've got this line here coming down here. And then this, just you can do a rough semicircle. This onion is coming just past the end of that. And then you've got this garlic. And you're just putting a rough area here. So that onion is coming across here. So I'm not looking at this, I'm looking at this negative space here. And if I want to be really sure I've got that in the right place, you can open it up and look at that. Relationship between that onion and then that here. As I said, it's quite rough at the moment. I'm looking at that space here. And then I'm looking at this negative space here. And then you're kind of getting a circle. I think mine's a bit wobbly, so I'm going to have to work on that. But what you're doing at the moment is you're just literally mapping it in. Like that. And you're looking around that handle. And I'm just looking at this space here. And then you're going to bring it round. It's kind of smaller than I thought, actually. Just shows you why it's so useful to have a measurement. So you can see that that's coming along nicely. And so you can then start going into the garlic. Putting in the basic shapes. And start putting in the details. And then once you're satisfied that you've got everything in place, you can start putting in little details, tidying up these lines. And also, most importantly, you'll have to take out this, tidy up the cross section and take that out as well. So we're going to leave that at the moment, and then I'm just going to tidy this up, start putting little details, and we're going to come back in and start shading. Now you've drawn that out and rubbed out the squares, I want you to take a 2B using the side of the pencil and just lightly mark in, shade in all the areas of medium and dark tones in the same shading, so in the same tone, because we're not going straight into dark. You've always got to build up. So you've got the light coming in from the right, and you've got obviously the darkest areas in here and on the left. So what I've done is using the side of your pencil. So if you find this difficult, practice so you can get an even shading. So there are two ways to hold the pencil. You can use the point for sharp edges, and you can use the side of the pencil for shading. So this again, now note when I'm going inside the jug, the mug, it's going to be, I'm not going really hard in like this, okay? I'm just doing a medium tone first off, because you want to build up your tones rather than just put it straight down. Here as well. Now you've got some light coming on here, and you've got shadow. Very important with shadow. Shadow always is darker straight under the object, but it's not always the same tone. Can you see there's light reflecting in that, and medium tones here? Again, it's just darker under here, but gets lighter going here and again here. Also, it's not hard lines. The biggest mistake people keep making is putting a circle around the shadow and it just looks like it's cut out. You can put a very, very light, you can see here that I have put very light sketch where it should be, but that's all you want there. So again, you're using the side of the pencil. because you can always take that out. And with a 2B, it's quite soft anyway, so you don't want to dig in to the page, otherwise it will mark and you won't be able to get that up. Now it's a bit darker here where the other onion is touching it. Okay, so once you've done that, you can start actually working in the darker tones, which we'll do in the next segment. Now going to switch to the 4B, and you're going to start really building in those tones. Now, a little tip is that if you're going to find that you're going to get pencil onto your hand as you're going across, so take a little piece of paper and you can put it down, and you can also start cleaning up those crisper lines, because obviously this is metal, so it needs to be, those lines need to be crisp, apart from, oh wait, can you see? Now that's because of the photocopy. I get that because you can see that clearer, that there's a lost line. Can you see that here? So when you lose lines, somebody talks about lost lines, it means that in a place of deep shadow or light, you've lost that line. Can you see that? So you also want to actually capture that in your drawing as well, but that'll be right at the very end. Quite a crisp line across here. So I'm starting from the left to the right and building up the tones. Also note the different edges. So for example, you've got quite a nice crisp line here and here around the lip. I think I've done that. But here, it's very soft. Gradually, it's a gradual shading. So this is a hard line, that's a hardish line, but this is very soft. And the reason, so you're going to use the point of the pencil to get that here. I'm going to take out that highlight of that lip afterwards, so don't worry about that. And then you're going to use the side of the pencil to put in the shading, a little softer. And the really good tip is, if you go in a circular motion and lighten the pressure, you'll get a softer line. Also, you can use your finger as well. So you can see that coming up nicely here. And then I'm going to get, so I've got to fill this in, start filling in this. This is going to take a little bit of time, I think. And also, I'm going to simplify some of these details here, and I'm going to start putting in some of the details as well as I go along. So you've got these lines coming around the onion. But do you notice where the light hits again? the lines just go. So you can always take that out. If you go overboard, you can always take that out with a rubber as well. So I'm going to start building up these darker tones here and here, and then we'll come back and put in the detail. I've been busy building up the tones. So you've got the darkest tone here, as you can see, and this is the pot going away. I've tried to retain the light coming here and here, and sort of getting those darker tones closer to the onions and underneath the objects. And if you want, as I said, don't forget when you're going around and you want a softer line, say for a shadow, you can go in a circular motion as well. And this is actually putting that shadow here. And what happens is that when you put those darker shadows in, the bigger the contrast, it more the catches the eye as well. And then when you've put, don't forget to put the little bits of detail in. So the lines, just a few lines on the onions. Now I didn't put that all over. So what you've got here is where the light hits, I'm leaving those lines out. I'm not putting those, can you see that? Because the light, that's what we call lost lines. So when the light hits, or maybe when it goes into the shading, the shadows, you lose the edges and you lose the detail, and that gives it more description as well. Also, what I want you to do is, now, for example, can I just say that for this one, I know that I've got kind of a grit, it's a sort of a old metal background that I've got, but I'm actually going to leave that. I'm not actually going to fill in the background. You're very welcome to if you want, but I personally would leave it. The reason why is because I want to show you, again, lost lines. So you've drawn in the onion, but I'm going to take that out. And also, don't feel you have to draw everything in detail, because this garlic is quite rough here. And the onions are quite roughly drawn out, and these are more, this is where your eye is going, where the contrast is going, and you can actually be a little bit more detailed there. You can also use, remember what I said about using this as a pencil? You can actually, you can take that out, but say for example you've gone over the whole onion like that, you can take it out in sections as well and build up. So you're almost sort of taking in, putting in, taking out, putting in, taking out. Don't forget to keep sharpening your pencils. Now I used a 6B in this one and the darker areas underneath, but then you can go back to your 2B or 4B, whichever you're more comfortable with. Don't forget to use a piece of paper if you don't want to smudge it. You can put in these details here. And you see, the more contrast you give to that, the whiter the garlic will come out, and it'll make it. And don't forget these little torn edges. So this is the end where you're just putting in a few little details. Put some lines in here. A little bit of darkness as well. It's a little bit darker here, I think, because you want to have the soft curve of the onion, and to get that you've got from the dark tones to the medium tones to the light. You do have some catching there as well, don't forget that. And the contrasts between each object, so for example, you want to have that contrast here and here between the mug and the onion, but you don't want to forget the little bit of reflected light here as well. I can assure you, the more you look at this, the more you'll see. And then you can put some of these lines in. Don't forget, I don't want you to go over this lighter area though. And then I'm going to carry on taking out lines now. So this is where the pencil rubber comes into its own. So I can get a really nice light shape going around. You see that? But if you want to smudge and soften, you can, and then you can go back in and soften that as well. Now this bit here, I think I don't really see that because that's where the light is hitting. Like, you don't see this bit as well. So you can take those lines. It seems a bit scary to take out the lines, but do you see the light is coming from this way? So you can, it's just giving it more description as well. I'm just leaving that onion as is, but you can put some lines in, some descriptive lines, just to give it a sense of what it is. And then I'm just taking this out. I'm leaving that bit quite sketchy. As well, and there you have it. You have got a tonal still life where you've got from the light, the medium and the dark shades. So this is going to actually help you with your observational skills. It's going to help you drawing things out in the relationships. But most importantly, when you look at something in front of you, anything, you really need to see the tonal qualities to see where the lightest areas are and the darkest areas. If you set up your own still life, make sure that you have one source of light. The easiest, obviously, you can, there are no, you know, you can bend the rules, but the easiest way to do it is to have one source of light coming from the left or the right. Don't usually have it coming straight down, otherwise you don't get these nice long shadows. So enjoy that. Just try and develop it as much as you can and build up those shadows nicely, and make sure that you use the side of the pencil and the point for the softer shadows, the point of the pencil for the harder lines. Make sure that you don't stick with the same pencil as well, and that it's sharpened, and that you use the rubber as well, so you sort of put in and take out. So enjoy.